Aloha. Welcome to Light Drama Action. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. And let's get to the content for today. Peace.
Before we begin, I want to offer a clear and firm warning. What you're about to hear contains graphic descriptions. This content is intended for mature audiences only. Listener discretion is strongly advised. And remember, all individuals mentioned in this video, including Mr. Combs, are presumed innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. If you're joining us for the first time, full summaries for days 1 through 23 are available on the video tab of this channel. The 24th day of Sean Diddy Combs' federal sex trafficking trial opened with 2 government summary witnesses on the stand. Special Agent Deliasa Penland of the Southern District of New York U.S. Attorney's Office and paralegal specialist Ananya Sankar of the same office. Penland and Sankar were tasked with the methodical, dispassionate job of shepherding the jury through mountains of documentary evidence, banking records, hotel and flight bookings, text message logs, and hotel registries. The prosecutors say weave together the story of Combs' illicit freak-off sex parties. Penland, an FBI agent detailed to the U.S. Attorney's Office, led the jury through a massive timeline chart connecting specific dates, locations, and participants to video footage of these parties. Sankar, a civilian paralegal, read aloud excerpts of messages and led jurors through summary charts of texts and calls. Together, they formed the cogs of the prosecution's late game machine, the bookers and ledger keepers, whom prosecutors say kept Combs' dark enterprise humming behind the scenes. That morning, in the cramped Manhattan courtroom, the mood was tense and taut as the pair took the stand. The day's evidence was straightforward on paper but shocking in content. Explicit clips, coded messages, and stacks of receipts. Penland began by detailing the chronology of the alleged freak-off sessions with Combs' former girlfriend Cassie Ventura and others from 2009 through 2017. Alongside her, Sankar walked the jury through a years-long matrix of correspondence from Combs' inner circle. Summary witnesses like Sankar are permitted to read charts of documents into evidence as long as they stick to the text. In practice, that meant Sankar and Penland recited dozens of texts, hotel charges, and flight manifests with few inferences of their own. They read from chart after chart. Sankar guided jurors through snippets of 4 years of group texts among Combs' top staffers. His chief of staff, Christina Coram, and his head of security, Damian D-Rock Butler, coordinating Combs' schedule. These exchanges described everything from private jets to late-night hotel rendezvous. At one point, Agent Penland displayed a spreadsheet 71 rows deep aligning names of Combs, Cassie, and various male escorts against flight records, hotel reservations, and video files recovered from each encounter. The chart only shows individuals for whom we have video footage showing they were at a particular freak-off, she testified. In other words, each entry was a confirmed meeting by Combs at a hotel night. Sankar's testimony was a parade of quotations. She read from flight manifests listing Cassie as a passenger on Combs' Gulfstream jet. She cited hotel invoices booked under Combs' alias, Frank Black, at 3 a.m. One Trump hotel invoice showed the guest requested a 3 a.m. check-in. She quoted Combs' own text arranging these sessions. In one exchange from January 2013, Combs wrote to Cassie with lurid bluntness, "You horny?" he asked via text. "Would you want to celebrate Christmas and have a freak off tonight or Friday?" Even offering that he'd already wrapped up her Christmas presents. In another chain, Sankar narrated texts in which Cassie and an escort named Sheree Punisher Hayes hammered out a deal. Cassie texted, "Can we actually do 3 a.m. at the Trump Hotel, Columbus Circle?" Hayes replied, "Great, I'll text when I'm on my way," noting his fee was $200 cash for the session. These appear now routine coordination messages would have made little sense were these private jet trips simply business or pleasure. Other documents underscored the payroll and logistics behind the lurid events. Agent Penland walked jurors through financial records showing Combs paid for these outings with company money. Jurors are being shown travel and credit card records that will help establish that Sean Combs bankrolled freak-offs by paying for flights. For example, flight records in Combs' name carrying Cassie on those freak-off dates, and credit card statements lining up with hotel bills. In cross-section, a chart showed flights into and out of New York timed precisely with the nights later marked in videos. And on some nights, Combs didn't just order the sex parties, he wired envelopes of thousands of dollars in cash, Sankar noted, sliding large sums to participants. One 2019 text exchange from Courtroom, Combs' chief of staff, even alluded to recruiting via a service called Cowboys and Angels, used to find men for these encounters, underscoring how these sessions spanned days at a time. Meanwhile, Penland queued up the centerpieces of the prosecution's case, the videos themselves. During a closed-circuit viewing, the jury watched two grisly clips, one roughly 11 minutes, the other nearly 40 minutes long, of Combs engaged with Cassie and others in New York hotel rooms. Because of their explicit content, only jurors, plus counsel and the judge, were allowed to see them. Court records note everyone wore headphones, with the public barred. Even so, at least one juror winced as the images flickered on screen, the courtroom stiff with tension. But Combs' defense insisted they showed consensual acts, not crimes. Under Penland's narration, jurors saw glimpses of these marathon sex parties that were central to the case's rape and racketeering charges. Sankar also pointed out messages from another former girlfriend using the alias Jane, who had previously testified that Combs' lifestyle left her exploited, heartbroken, and manipulated. In Jane's text forwarded by Combs to Courtroom, she declared she wanted no more hotel nights and simply, "I just can't," over and over. When Cassie sued Combs in 2023 for abuse, Jane warned in a later text that Combs had threatened her he would send her humiliating home video recordings to her child's father if she spoke out. These words painted the controlling shadow Combs cast over his lovers. Anytime a woman complained or tried to flee, Combs reportedly menaced her. After midday, jurors returned to hear defense lawyers turn the tables on these charts. Garagos had Sankar concede that after February 7th of 2024, when Combs texted an assistant named Mia pleading, "Just need my memory jogged on some things," there were no phone records of Combs ever calling Mia again. Mia had testified that Combs physically assaulted Cassie and helped witness other abuse. The defense highlighted such pauses to suggest Combs' inner circle wasn't constantly conspiring, that maybe some months were just quiet personal time. They also pointed to Jane's own cross-examination where her affectionate text to Combs, "I never came so hard in my life like that," she had texted him enthusiastically, were held up as evidence she wasn't an unwilling captive. In open court, Garagos bluntly argued the log showed benign acts, not a criminal ring. "We're talking about hotel stays and flights to Jane's house," he reminded jurors, implying there were more innocent explanations for Combs' spending. Throughout the day, Combs himself alternated between guarded stillness and restless energy. The normally commanding mogul, dressed in a light sweater and white shirt, sat at the defense table with arms folded at times, then leaned forward or rocked as Sankar read list after list. The jury maintained a sober, even somewhat somber demeanor. No one spoke, but after some of the more harrowing charts, the text about Combs dragging Cassie or the images from the break-in at Jane's apartment heard about earlier in the trial, and even seated behind masks, one could sense a tightening of shoulders. At least once a juror winced audibly when the video clips played. Otherwise, the jury's reactions were mostly contained under their masks, each member nodding along or jotting notes as the prosecution pounded its theme, that Combs used his celebrity power to manipulate and control women. The judges, lawyers, and gallery watched these moments silently, but before the late afternoon recap of videos, Day 24 produced a bombshell not on the calendar. Just after court convened, Judge Arun Subramanian announced that juror number 6, a 41-year-old corrections officer, had been dismissed from the panel. It wasn't testimony that did him in, but inconsistent answers. During a side conversation and earlier in jury selection, this juror had given shifting statements about where he lived, alternating between a Bronx address and a New Jersey home with his fiancée and child. The judge openly questioned whether the juror had shaded the truth to get seated in this high-profile case. There is nothing the juror can do at this point to put the genie back in the bottle and restore his credibility, Subramanian said bluntly. He added that those inconsistencies undercut the juror's honesty and raised doubts about his ability to follow instructions. Defense lawyers protested vigorously. Combs' team lamented the loss of one of the two black men on the jury, warning that substituting a white alternate would make the panel noticeably less diverse. But Judge Subramanian cut them off. While acknowledging he took their concerns about race seriously, he declared he cannot, indeed should not, allow race to enter into this consideration. He noted that federal rules flatly forbid dismissing a juror because of race. Although he said the overall jury was sufficiently diverse, he promised to inform the lawyers if he reconsidered. In sum, the judge held firm. He dismissed juror number 6 and seated the next alternate, a 57-year-old white architect, without changing the verdict's path. The jury left the courtroom afterward, shrinking by one member as the gallery tensed at the abrupt change. With juror concerns settled, the prosecution's closing witnesses took the stand, but one named as the final substantive witness, Brendan Paul, a former personal assistant to Combs, never testified. Paul had already been spotlighted in court filings as Combs' alleged drug mule, a figure who was arrested last year trying to bring cocaine and marijuana onto Combs' plane. Federal agents hoped he might admit incriminating details about Combs' drug use or finances. Instead, Paul did something unexpected. He quietly invoked his Fifth Amendment right to avoid self-incrimination. Called to the stand, he repeatedly declined to answer questions. The trial record will not reveal what Paul might have said, only that he would have to be given immunity if he is to testify at all. In effect, the last piece of live prosecution witness testimony vanished. The judge had already indicated he'd likely grant immunity to induce Paul's cooperation, but on day 24, no answers came. By late afternoon, the courtroom buzzed with what had come into view. The government was visibly on the brink of resting its case. For weeks, prosecutors have hinted they would be done by midweek. Between summaries of credit card and plane records, the shock of Cassie's texts about being dragged by Combs' hair, and Jane's admissions of feeling exploited, one theme loomed: power and control. Combs is presented as a master manipulator, an entertainment kingpin who used his wealth and muscle to orchestrate these parties and then tried to silence those who complained. Every exhibit reinforced the prosecution's thesis that Combs was the puppet master of this sordid enterprise. Where earlier testimony had given human stories, Jane's trembling voice, Cassie's tears on the stand, and day 24 turned exclusively to the paper trail behind them, money trails, flight logs, calendars, and the explicit video proof itself. Yet contradictions undercut the clarity. Defense lawyers insisted repeatedly that all recorded acts were consensual. They had jurors see Combs in court daily, looking alternately confident and pained, and stressed that Cassie and Jane both twice stayed in Combs' lavish hotels of their own volition. The judge itself hinted at the limits of today's evidence. Subramanian told Penland she could only read documents and not make inferences about what happened in those rooms. In other words, all the charts can show is that something happened on a given night, not whether Combs committed a crime. Defense counsel even got Penland to admit the charts simply contained transcripts of messages and that she had no first-hand knowledge of the events. In places, it felt like a contest of interpretations. Was Combs a predatory ringleader or a millionaire with eccentric sexual tastes who documented everything? As dusk fell on day 24, the stakes could not have been higher. Prosecutors are winding down what they call the Combs Enterprise case, an accusation that Combs and a coterie of close aides ran a racketeering conspiracy under cover of his music empire. If they convinced 12 jurors that Combs was guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, the 55-year-old mogul could face decades or even life behind bars.